Shock, terrifying revenge for Kiev. Apartments are freezing in Belgorod. No heating, no electricity. A blackout is sweeping across Russia. Meanwhile, the US is loading an ultra-powerful missile for Ukraine. An entire arsenal of explosive force to destroy Russia. Panic grips the Kremlin. An unexpected turn in the negotiations. The enemy changes its rhetoric. Will the war end in spring? China is shaken. Military leadership turned upside down. Is a coup brewing? The US threatens Russia. Trump gives Putin 72 hours before a new war begins. And meanwhile, from the other side, China is already preparing to bite off the huge chunk of territory. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafanova here with the latest updates. In response to Russia's energy terror, Ukraine is striking Russian cities. In Russia's Belgorod, a large-scale blackout occurred following a missile strike. Energy infrastructure was damaged.
There is serious damage at an infrastructure facility.
The blackout occurred as a result of a missile strike on two key electrical substations. The substations hit were Frunzenskaya in the area of the village of Dragunsky in Belgorod district and a Belgorod substation in the area of Storozhevaya Street in the city itself. In some buildings in Belgorod, electricity remained available, but heating was cut off. With outdoor temperatures dropping to minus 22 degrees Celsius, apartments are rapidly cooling. Overall, after the strikes, electricity partially or completely disappeared in at least 9 municipalities of Belgorod Oblast. In Belgorod itself, lines formed at gas stations as residents began mass purchasing gasoline for generators. Many residents report disruptions to internet access and water supply as power outages caused water intake facilities to shut down. Strikes at 400 kilometers. The United States has tested a new powerful missile for Ukraine. This was reported by Defense Express, citing a statement from the press service of Eglin Air Force Base in the US. The new Rusty Dagger cruise missile, developed specifically for the armed forces of Ukraine, has successfully completed a testing phase with a live warhead. This weapon is expected to change the rules of the game thanks to its 400 kilometers range and record low cost. The missile is being developed by the US company Zone 5 Technologies under the Extended Range Attack Munition Program. At the Eglin Air Force Base test range in the United States, Zone 5 Technologies demonstrated the system's capabilities. The missile not only flew the planned route, but also struck the target with high precision using a real combat warhead, confirming its effectiveness. The explosion of the munition, weighing about 227 kilograms, proved impressive for a system of this class. Published photos confirmed that the missile hits dead center. The missile's main advantage is its cost. While modern cruise missiles cost millions of dollars, a single Rusty Dagger is estimated at about $246,000. Ukraine has received authorization to purchase up to 3,350 missiles. The $825 million package will be financed by European partners. The talks in Abu Dhabi offer a chance to end the war in the spring. According to some Ukrainian and US sources familiar with the conduct of the talks, there are indicators that the current negotiations may be more promising than widely credited. They say both sides are actually being more constructive, which admittedly is an adjective that has often been misused.
Before, these negotiations were like pulling teeth without anesthetic. Before, I felt like screaming whenever I had to see another readout that said the discussions were constructive. But now, I think they are constructive in some ways. I'm noticing the Russians are taking these talks more seriously.
Some of this, he said, owes to the skill of those now leading the Ukrainian team after the departure of Zelensky's powerful former chief of staff, Andriy Yermak.
I am noticing since David Arakhamia got involved, there's been a noticeable improvement with the Russian negotiators. I think that's because they respect them, especially David, and because they see them as people who are living in reality and are prepared to compromise. I'm cautiously optimistic that we have a reasonable chance to end this conflict in the spring.
Xi Jinping has carried out the unprecedented purge of the military leadership. The New York Times reports that since 2023, China's leader Xi Jinping has dismissed 5 out of 6 officers from the Central Military Commission of the CCP, the party's top military body. The most recent of those dismissed was China's top general Zhang Yuxia. The NYT noted that while the purges are formally aimed at combating corruption, they are also linked to demonstrations of loyalty to Xi Jinping. Overall, the outlet found that the scale of the purges is far larger. As of early 2023, China had at least 30 generals and admirals heading specialized units and commands. Of those, only 7 have retained their positions. The rest were dismissed, disappeared, or became subjects of investigations. The publication noted that the purges demonstrate Xi Jinping's exceptional power, but they have also created a leadership vacuum within the military. In 72 hours, American and European troops will be in Ukraine. These are security guarantees from partners in the event of a renewed attack by the Russian army on Ukraine after a peace agreement is signed. Details in our report.
A warning within 24 hours and a military strike within 72 hours with the involvement of NATO forces. The security guarantees for official Kiev, which have been discussed since last year by delegations from the US, Europe and Ukraine, have become known. Thus, according to information from the Financial Times, Kiev and its partners in Europe and the US have agreed on a multi-level plan designed to ensure Russia's compliance with a future ceasefire agreement in the war with Ukraine.
The first response to Russia's violation of the ceasefire will come within 24 hours. It will include diplomatic warnings and actions by the Ukrainian army necessary to stop the violation, 3 sources told the Financial Times. If hostilities continue after that, a second phase of intervention will be launched, involving the forces of a coalition of willing countries.
In particular, the United States, several EU member states, as well as the United Kingdom, Norway, Iceland and Turkey are ready to support the Ukrainian armed forces on the 3rd day.
The United Kingdom and France have promised to send troops and weapons to Ukraine as part of security guarantees supported by the United States, which are intended to reinforce a 20-point peace plan aimed at ending the war. The publication states, Europe-led deterrence forces will have to conduct operations in the air, at sea and on land after the ceasefire, with intelligence and logistical support from the United States.
Meanwhile, analysts note that the details of the agreement remain unclear since it implies actions by the allies after a ceasefire in Ukraine, while the terms of a possible truce have yet to be agreed upon. Security guarantees have also not yet been formalized with signatures, which also gives some countries the opportunity to back out of future commitments.
In any case, this deployment will be based on our own army. The second part is EU membership as part of security guarantees and the backstop force that will be provided by the United States. But this will become clear later when certain documents are signed and approved by the US Congress. The ultimate outcome of this situation will depend heavily upon what the Europeans are truly willing to do. If Russia launches another attack against us, as well as the specific actions the United States will take.
At the same time, the NATO Secretary General, who arrived in Kiev on February 3rd and experienced firsthand what a massive shelling of the Ukrainian capital is like, assured that the alliance countries that supported the plan will not abandon it.
Ukraine needs security guarantees and commitments that we will come to its aid when necessary. And for this, the Coalition of the Willing provides for a backstop system, insurance from the United States, and the provision of military assistance to the armed forces in Ukraine.
At the same time, experts are already asking how exactly will NATO armies be able to help us if time and again statements are made in Europe that the alliance will only be ready for war in the 2030s.
You might ask, what kind of military response is this? Considering that, as we've discussed many times, Europe simply no longer has the forces needed to operate on the ground in sufficient numbers. This is mainly a story about aviation, because where Russia has a significant advantage is precisely in the skies. And in fact, if the European armies had intervened for Ukraine in terms of air power, for example, at the start of the full-scale invasion, if they had closed the skies over Ukraine so that Russian planes simply couldn't fly there at all, the situation would have developed very differently.
At the same time, what many believe to be a not-so-accidental leak of Ukrainian guarantees to the British press on the eve of the talks plays a crucial role for the negotiations in the Ukraine, US and Russia format, which will continue today. This is so that Putin's team understands in advance. Demanding an end to support for post-war Ukraine is pointless.
In the context of, for example, the negotiations currently underway, of course, this not only can but must become one of the elements of the system of security guarantees that will be offered to Ukraine. This is a very important point. This absolutely must be spelled out, and it can apply both to NATO as a whole and to individual countries. Moreover, we have more than 24 security agreements with various countries, and these agreements guarantee us certain types of support, consultative, financial, military, technical, and various others, which without a doubt form the foundation of the country's security in the future.
As has been increasingly noted in Europe, this also forms the basis of their own security. Against the backdrop of unidentified drones flying over, the open transfer of Orsha units to Belarus with an eye on the EU, and the restoration of Russian military bases on the NATO border, Ukraine is ceasing to be a buffer zone and is becoming almost the main guarantor of Europe's security.
Now, Europe and Ukraine are already forming an inseparable and indivisible system of European security, as it is called in the European capitals themselves. It has become clear that Ukraine is not a buffer, but rather a part of the common European security space. After all, without Ukraine, it thought it was stronger, and that Ukraine was just a buffer, but it turned out that's not the case. Without Ukraine, it is much weaker, and with Ukraine, on the contrary, it can actually become stronger.
At the same time, how Russia will react to the information about Ukrainian guarantees, we will find out very soon as Putin is informed that Dmitriev and his associates failed today to persuade the West to back down.
The lack of water forces people out and the cold finishes them off. Residents of occupied Donetsk are being pushed toward evacuation to Russian territory as survival becomes increasingly difficult due to failing utilities. What is happening there now and why the people of Donbass are on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe, we explain in the report.
If you want to see what the Russian world really is, you need to see at least one thing. A video from Donetsk occupied by Russia. Donetsk, but not the version shown by Kremlin representatives, the real one.
Just look at what people have been reduced to. They're scooping up water, right off the asphalt from a burst sewer.
We just stopped getting water. Just like that. It hasn't been running for a month and a half now. I don't know, it's just, honestly, it's unreal. I don't know, I really don't know what to do without water anymore. It's impossible. It's impossible to live without water. There's no water at all. It's not coming out anywhere. Not here, not outside, not at home, not outside, not in the basement, nowhere. We just can't get any water. Seriously. In the 21st century.
What Russia is doing to Donbass, it's not even a crime. It's destruction. Destruction of our Donbass. Then what kind of thing are they trying to build for themselves? That's something, honestly, that's extremely secondary. They've seized this land, and no matter what happens here, no matter how bad things get, they won't compare it to pre-war times in Ukraine. They're creating a new reality where you either live if you want or die if you don't. That's how it is.
Once one of the most expensive cities in Ukraine has turned into ruins. Poverty, fear for your life, the absence of any normal existence, teetering on the edge of a humanitarian catastrophe, and an unprecedented darkness.
I don't know if there's a road anywhere that's worse than this. Here it's nothing but potholes and ruts. Honestly, this is already bordering on science fiction. So on Razdolnaya 19, I went to my friend's place, got some water, did my laundry. And in the end, what happened? I got stuck in the elevator because there's no electricity. Come on, guys.
For many centuries, Grand Palace, the marriage. Come on in. In
Donetsk, there is a shortage of both drinking and utility water and partial lack of heating, which leads to problems with the sewage system. Putin claimed he wanted to save the people of Donbass, but after occupying Ukrainian territories, he simply gave up.
We're supplying some of the water and some more from our reserve reservoirs. But for now, there is still very little water.
Now, in the so-called DNR, deaths are being recorded among people who have become victims of the water crisis. Due to the lack of water, it is mainly elderly people living alone and people with disabilities who are dying. The situation is becoming so critical that in Russia, they have started talking about an evacuation of the local population from Donetsk, planned by Pushilin, the head of the so-called DNR, already by the summer of 2026, due to the same huge problems with infrastructure.
The head of the DNR continues to insist that some residents of Donetsk will have to be evacuated for the summer because of water problems. In Moscow, they have set the task of avoiding such a scenario, but the authorities of the Republic admit that for now, they do not know how to do this.
But experts are convinced that this is unlikely since the majority of Donbas residents are pensioners, and for the Russian authorities there is no point in evacuating them.
An exceptionally dry summer season would just be an extraordinarily difficult challenge. What can we say about summer if right now, when I talk to my acquaintances and friends in Makivka and Donetsk, they recently for 2 weeks simply had no water at all. Just stupid, on a not so bad schedule. Now there's a new problem with the electricity system. The voltage is 160 to 170. So those who installed a voltage stabilizer or some devices, they're kind of the winners here. Basically, the winners are those who live in their own houses and have money. and they can somehow arrange their lives amid this general degradation. And in this system, evacuation is also possible. But evacuation of whom? Honestly, I don't quite understand. There aren't that many young people, and there are about 2 million pensioners. Are you talking about the working age population moving somewhere to the interior regions of Russia? Well, maybe. We'll see.
The problems in Donetsk have been going on for a long time. But the colder the winter gets, the less people shout about their love for Russia. Despite the heavy snowfall, the water situation still hasn't improved. In some villages, there is no water at all, for months.
It's 19:33 on the clock. The tap is silent. The whole village has been practically without water for the 3rd month now.
The struggle for survival in Donbas has only gotten worse. It's freezing because people can't even get water from the barrels standing out on the streets.
The village is Nashzavod, Kalantai Street, February 1st, 2026. The nearest barrel is at 45 Kalantai. Residents have already written that the tap is frozen, so please don't turn it. And accordingly,
Turn it or not, it doesn't matter.
whether you turn the tap or not, there is simply no water here. Right now, people are out everywhere searching for any water they can find, desperately trying to get some for themselves.
People are literally forced to melt snow just to wash themselves or do the dishes somehow.
Thank goodness there's snow outside. This is how we get water for ourselves, technical water or whatever you want to call it.
If in winter people can at least be saved by snow, then the hot summer could wipe out any remaining chance of survival. Pushilin himself has already admitted that the situation with the internal reservoirs is close to critical. He stated that the Donbas water pipeline only supplies them with 25 to 30% of their needs. A humanitarian catastrophe is turning what was once a leading city with a population of 1 million and thriving industry into a ghost town.
You see, the garbage over there is honestly hardly ever taken out. And water is supplied only twice a week for maybe 2 to 3 hours at the very best. So, well, as you can imagine, it's hard to even figure out how many people actually live there now. Half of the pre-war population, maybe a third of the pre-war population. And maybe only a third of the pre-war population is actually Ukrainian. If you count the newcomers, then maybe it might add up to half. So Donetsk, it has sharply lost its significance, its substantial influence, and all its advantages, so to speak. The mines are closed, both Zasyadko and Skachinsky. The Donetsk metallurgical plant is not operating. The water situation has become bad and hopeless. That was the situation by April 2022, and nothing has changed since then.
And it's worth recalling that from 2014 to 2022, for 8 years, despite the shelling of Donbas, water was supplied to Donetsk from Ukrainian territory via the Siversky Donetsk-Donbas Canal. In 2022, when Putin launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the filtration stations, dams, and the canal were destroyed. They were destroyed specifically by the Russian army. That is why, from the very start of the full-scale invasion, life in Donetsk became unbearable. But Putin keeps saying that the problem is because of the Ukrainians.
Do you truly understand where this massive problem actually comes from? The primary water intakes, which make up the main water supply system for the entire region, are located very near Sloviansk, in a territory that unfortunately is still heavily controlled by the enemy forces. And this fact is absolutely crucial for everyone to understand right now. It can only be resolved, according to the old system, when this territory comes under the control of our armed forces.
Let us just remind you that without the intervention of the Russian army and private military companies, there would have been no war in Donbas at all. But Putin did not stop, and now in Donetsk people are literally dying because of Russian rule. Russians, is this what you wanted? Do you see your president's victory?
Is Russia on the brink of collapse? In China, territories are already being counted. The aggressor state may fall apart, and in Beijing this is seen as a window of opportunity, as openly stated by Chinese media. Is this analysis a warning or a real plan for the future? Details in our report.
China is Russia's main partner, supporting its economy and military machine. At least that's how propaganda presents it.
I consider Chairman Xi Jinping a deeply trusted and reliable friend and a steadfast, consistent strategic partner. He is my reliable friend, a stable partner, and a vital ally of Russia. And this serves as the fundamental and primary cornerstone for the ongoing comprehensive development of our Russian-Chinese relations.
But is that really the case? After all, trade turnover with China is constantly declining. Chinese banks are stopping transactions with Russia because of sanctions. And at the same time, China denies selling weapons or components to Russia.
China's position on the Ukrainian crisis is consistent and clear. We do not add fuel to the fire and do not use this conflict for our own benefit.
Pairs, threes, tens of millions of Chinese soldiers. That would be just what we need right now.
Why think so?
You think so? Why not?
Why? Do you really think only soldiers should die?
Oh, I look at the Belgorod region and think how much we lack the Chinese army, the people.
Just 3 years ago, propagandists were rejoicing that China would replace the Western market. But it turned out that it replaced the Russian market as well. The Russian authorities are trying to patch a giant hole in the budget with a government loan in Chinese yuan.
We just bought a wonderful, completely Chinese car. It's amazing. Many, many times cheaper than the cars we used to buy before. I bought myself 3 pairs Gucci shoes. 2,000 rubles each. Wonderful. Probably made somewhere in China as well. I hope here too. Fake, of course. Now I buy them on principle. Only fakes.
But take a look at what, for example, the soldiers are driving. What? Russian-made cars, right? You have to be a real patriot to drive a Patriot. Because it costs a fortune, breaks down all the time, and the spare parts are insane. That's why the guys drive Chinese cars. And now they need motorcycles. Russian ones? No. For some reason, yeah, there are very few Russian ones.
There aren't any Russian ones at all.
That's exactly the point. No.
Russian motorcycles simply don't exist. What, you didn't know that?
Even the head of the foreign ministry, Lavrov, had a Freudian slip. He basically called Putin Xi Jinping's donkey.
As they say in the East, the guest is the donkey, the host is the master. So the whole program, of course, depends on those gracious proposals that the Chinese president and his team made to our president.
And yesterday, my friend and representative of the PRC treated me to this duck. Peking style, to be honest with you, there were 2 pieces there, and I thought I'd only eat 1 piece. You get what I mean, right? That's it. But I couldn't resist. I ate the second one too, you know, it was just too delicious. And
China has officially approved new geographic maps, on which a large part of Russian territory is included. Ussuri Island is recognized as Chinese territory, and they're also openly discussing scenarios for taking over Russia's Far East, which is rich in gold, diamonds, and oil, which in fact, the Chinese have already largely settled.
The Chinese dragon is unlikely to stay within its borders, simply because, by the way, it actually has certain historical claims to a significant part of our Far East. And that's a fact.
Of course, at first there was enthusiasm, but gradually it faded, and eventually we all realized that ASEAN had become a Chinese colony. Well, it's simply a slave-owning enterprise. A slave-owning operation or a prison, call it what you will, where they put overseers in place so that they could keep the workers under control everywhere. Because there is still resentment no matter what. And the workers in Asina even went out to protest with the action, Asina is not China. And they also threaten, they regularly threaten, saying, you won't be able to get a job anywhere in this city. Here's your black mark. So just sit quietly and keep your mouth shut for your 15 to 30,000.
Russian television is already showing videos about how to find a Chinese husband, and in Russian schools and government institutions, Chinese is being actively studied. Subtitles?
Added by Dima Tozok. It is divided into 2 camps, those who want to study and those who are skeptical about it and say, why do we need Chinese? We're never planning to go there. I answer them very simply, actually. I say, I'm not teaching you Chinese here, but using the Chinese language to make you think with your head. And that skill will always come in handy.
It reached the point of complete absurdity when Xi Jinping declared that Russia would not have won World War II without China. And Putin silently agreed.
China and Russia, being the main theaters of military operations in World War II, made a decisive contribution to the victory over fascism. and in doing so, they laid the cornerstone of the post-war world order.
It turns out that China is not helping Russia at all, as Putin tries to present it, but is simply taking advantage of its weakness to seize resources and strengthen its influence in Asia.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.